everyone. Welcome to the Beyond the X's and O's podcast, brought to you by the Coaches Site, the #1 online resource for hockey coaches. This podcast is hosted by myself, Dr. Cassidy Preston, a mental performance coach and founder of CP Mindset, as well as Chris Piero, who has spent the past 30 plus years in the game of hockey from the NHL on down, including where he coached me back in my junior days. Now we get to work together in the mental performance and leadership space. We got another doozy of a podcast episode today. We wanted to double down from the Hockey is Broken episode, which wasn't just about hockey. But before we do, I know there's lots going on in the sports world with the NCAA basketball and hockey. What's your take on some of this current events?
Yeah, Cass, thanks. It's certainly as we're recording this, it's been a crazy eventful week in the world of sports. Last weekend was the NCAA Final Four, both for the men's side and the women's side, and pretty exciting women's tournament. South Carolina, University of South Carolina, undefeated all year, lose out in the semifinals to the University of Iowa, and Caitlin Clark, who's been taken the NCAA women's basketball by storm. So she's kind of just taken charge. And then LSU Tigers, who, basically, have never been to the tournament, never been to the Final Four. Anyways, Iowa plays LSU in the finals, and it's an epic final. Great game. What's neat about that was the University of Connecticut wins on the men's side. They beat San Diego State. 3 of the 4 teams in the Final Four were their first time entry. So pretty exciting, weekend of basketball and, for lovers of sports. But what I thought was really intriguing was on the women's side and the growth and the popularity of women's athletics is that the demand for tickets for the women's Final Four were far greater than they were for the men's side. So it speaks to the athleticism, but the popularity of women's sports that's coming down the pipe, but also the television viewing audience was far greater for the women's final on Sunday than it was for the men's final Monday night. But at the time of recording this intro, we're also faced with the NCAA Frozen Four, which is fantastic for hockey fans, and obviously, where we've kind of talked a lot about hockey and hockey coaching, and so it's great to see the 4 schools: Minnesota, Quinnipiac, Michigan, and Boston University at the Frozen Four. I think it's in Tampa. So certainly wish those teams best of luck. Should be exciting. And Adam Fantilli, who's the number 2 rated draft prospect at the NHL draft, plays for Michigan, and a Hobey Baker finalist. Good Nobleton, Ontario boy. So certainly wish them all the best. And with the Frozen Four.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's a great take on the growth of the women's sport and games, and so I'd love to see that. Big advocate of that with 2 young daughters myself, so that's hits home for me. I know we want to just pretty much go straight to the episode here because this was our response and doubling down. I got quite fired up after the last one went, and there was lots of great support around this. Which was that episode around Hockey's Broken, which wasn't just about hockey, but we framed it that way. We know it's about other sports as well. Their support was great, but some of the challenges and people criticizing, the lens and kind of still protecting the game. So it really went off on, it struck a chord with me, and I wanted to kind of double down. And one of the frames that, when I'm looking at this and after we recorded the actual episode and looking back at it, it was like, no, like as a hockey player, and you can attest to this, I think I played a bit as a shit disturber. Like I was not afraid to stir things up. I wanted to win. I wanted to compete. I love to compete, and I played the game hard, and I enjoyed the game that way. But since finishing my schooling and throughout school, I've, tempered back that, playing board games. My wife didn't like when I was too competitive, those kind of things. So I had to temper back some of that, mentality. And especially then in my career and mental performance coach, focus on building their firm and doing the work that I do, haven't really focused on stepping on too many toes. But over the past couple of years and especially of late, and especially after getting some of the criticism to the episode, which had the intent of just wanting leaders to step up and take more bold action, I was like, I don't mind shaking the tree. I want to fight this fight, which is not about winning a game anymore. It's about the game. It's about the youth. It's about the experience of the game, and it's what drives us. Is what drives me. And so there's, I've got a fire for this cause, and so this was an important episode for me. I know for you as well too. And yeah, so that's my time to shake things up. And there's some good things. We'll highlight maybe a couple more thoughts here, but we'll keep it short so the listeners can dive right in.
Yeah, I hope the listeners enjoy it, and certainly we welcome feedback. And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, great. Just send us some feedback. It's always good to hear what people's thoughts and opinions, and we recognize that some of the material that we talk about and how we go about it, and the takes that go on may not resonate with everybody, and that's okay. I mean, that's the beauty of it. But I think the key is we need to continue the dialogue. It's when the dialogue is not encouraged, or it's not allowed, that I think we get to a point where you and I do a podcast, or a couple now, of this nature. It's really the dialogue's been swept under the carpet, and I think that's the idea here. So, in the big picture of things, please reach out, let us know your thoughts, your feelings, and we're certainly open to continuing the dialogue further, because that only means we're advancing the cause, and that's what we want to do. We want to be able to push the envelope, because we've said it, Cass, and maybe I'm speaking from my age in terms of sport has such a great impact on my life. From when I was a younger as a university hockey player to coach, and as I start, as I'm older now, but sports has such an unbelievable aspect of positivity in everybody's lives. It's just we want to keep it that way, and kind of get rid of the negativity stuff, and the stuff that we speak about in our podcast. So hopefully everybody it resonates with people.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say around it, just to kind of give you a guide, and you can read the write up as well, which I wanted to kind of make pretty concise and to the point, and make some my points clear around the title of the podcast. And this episode is "The Leaders of Sport Are Failing." And we get that's a strong assertion, and it's not to say that every leader's failing, but the three big reasons that stood out, and we cover in different ways in the episode, are a lot of leaders are afraid to rock the boat. They're just doing the status quo. There's a lot more excuses than results. We see a lot of ignorance, and leaders burying their head in the sand and pretending that there's no problems, or they're not taking the responsibility and accountability to do something different, to do something about the current situation. And there's some lots of great, what do we call it? The journalism, the investigative journalism by Rick Westhead, et cetera. The Athletic
Yeah.
article that we make mention to with the Harvard women's hockey situation.
Wow.
Those things really highlight that we can't be ignorant anymore to the challenges that are in the sporting system, not just in hockey but in all sports. And then the last big point that stood out is like the incompetent leadership is perpetuating the culture of silence. And so to me, that is huge. And one of the things I went off on a bit of a tangent around, like, yes, there's the Harvard situation, the Katie Stone situation. It's like, as much as it's Katie is a problem in her own way, and again, we don't have everything, but that Athletic article is quite sheds a pretty negative picture. And I'm like, where's the athletic director? Where's Harvard? Where's NCAA? Like, are we not, like, she's still coaching with those accusations against her, and those out there? Like, in my opinion, she should be suspended until for like investigation like is done. Like, that's too heavy to just be like, oh well, like
Yeah.
it's confusing. And so when we talk about, it's just perpetuating that culture of silence. And so we get into a lot in the episode. I'm already getting fired up again, so you'll see it in the episode. Me and Chris, we go off on it in a few ways, but the bottom line is, I think it's really time for sports to evolve. And a lot of times I think people, and some of the comments in the last thing is like, oh, everything's great. Look, let's stick with the status quo. It's like, no, it's time to evolve and adapt and innovate and be progressive and do things differently. And to me, like, that's what's one of the great things about being a human. And so this is our call to action on leaders to step up to the cause, to be leaders, to change the game. And we're not trying to take an overly negative spin here. There is lots of hope, and we make mention to that. And there is good things going on and great people. So we are hopeful, but we want to make. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to shake the tree. I'm going to be loud in a sense, because this matters to me. It matters. I think it's important to do and to talk about. and to call on leaders to step up to the plate. So I'm going to leave it at that. Chris, any final thoughts before we let them dive in?
No, well said. I mean, and my mission is really to challenge coaches and organizations to be better leaders, and for sport in general. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully, everybody enjoys it. So
Yeah. Enjoy. Reach out with any comments. And as we keep going here, beyond the X and O's.
The Coaches Site is hockey's leading online coaching resource and was created to provide hockey's top coaches, leaders, and performance experts with a platform to share their experience and insights with coaches and organizations of all levels, with the goal of enhancing the development opportunity for their players. A membership includes access to 500 hours of educational videos, a library of over 700 drills, articles breaking down the latest tactics and systems, and the opportunity to join a coaching community of over 15,000 coaches from around the world. Regardless of the level you coach, the Coaches Site is going to provide you the ultimate coaching toolkit. Listeners of the Beyond the X's and O's podcast can save 25% off an annual membership by using the code BEOutstanding when you register. Again, get registered today by using the code BEOutstanding at thecoachesite.com.
CP Mindset provides mental performance coaching to elite athletes, teams, coaches, and business executives so they can achieve consistent elite performance. Our one-on-one coaching programs help elite athletes break through their mental blocks and take their game to the next level.
in addition, we offer team programs that help athletes improve their mental game and leadership skills. An important part of these programs is we work with you, the coach, to go beyond the X's and O's. We help you develop the human skills of leadership and become your listening partner. Just like athletes need coaches, so do coaches.
And at CP Mindset, we don't just work in sport. We also work with high-performing business executives and professionals, especially those who relate to being an elite athlete and want a similar approach to optimizing their performance in work and life. Find out more at cpmindset.com.
All right, Cass, I know you're fired up about this topic yet once again, so I'll just turn it right to you and let you go.
Yeah, we're gonna go here. We're gonna go because and get after it because we did. Is hockey broken? Question mark. And went off, fed up, frustrated. And what's interesting, a lot of support, a lot of people being like, great podcast, great write up, like, appreciative on, like, encouraging, supportive. What's interesting is the people challenging and the haters, the people not agreeing, and that only made me more fired up and want to be louder and make me double down on what I'm saying. And I like, some of the funny things people are like, oh, why are you coming at it with such a negative thing? Like it's such a great game, or like, why you got to label it like this is just junk? Yeah, I get it. The title, Is Hockey Broken, was a bit of a catchy market, like a way to get someone's attention. And we even alluded to in the thing, the purpose was to get leaders to step up and make bold decisions and to improve the culture. And so to me though, but like people's response that way, and there wasn't a lot, but the few that did, it's like, oh, it's everything why the culture is struggling. It's they're people, they're protecting it. Oh, it's okay. Like we're the, like one guy posted on LinkedIn, like Canada's the best. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, and take a hard look. If anyone thinks that the culture of sport, because again, this is not just hockey. We made the thing last episode about hockey because we work with a lot of hockey players. We were both in the game of hockey. The podcast is a lot of hockey. So it just made it more direct around hockey, but it's not. Like, a lot of sports are broken. A lot of the cultures are broken and there's challenges, and a lot of them can be improved in sport and other areas of life. It's not even just a sport thing. But the premise to me was it just make me double down more because like if you think it's not needed to be improved, like you're an idiot. Like is the way I would make the stance. Like what are we talking about here? The misogyny, the racism, the homophobia, the neglect, the emotional abuse. Like, are we seeing the same things? And I get quite a unique perspective. I was there as a player. I've coached. And the challenges of being a coach and in minor hockey, which was ridiculous. So like, whatever. But then seeing it and then my education and the research and having that side, but then just seeing it day in and day out and it's been almost 2 years now, really, where we like the declaration of war, the accountability, the frustration. Like, if you want to sit there and say everything's fine and dandy, come and look at it from my point of view. It is not fine and dandy. There's a lot of problems. So I'm doubling down on the assertion. I've got a lot of issues with the leadership and this is not just a Hockey Canada. This is every governing body. This isn't just a hockey thing. The US, the Harvard example, which I'm sure we'll touch on, women's hockey, what's going on there. We see it in the USHL, the leagues in the States. So yeah, maybe some things in different leagues in different places are doing better than maybe there's a lot of taint and challenges with Hockey Canada right now. So it's easy to throw mud there or whatever. But the point that I'm again getting at is, yeah, if there is problems, and from our point of view, there's a lot that can be worked on and getting leaders to step up. And I'm going to go on a couple other rants here, but I'm definitely not afraid to be a little louder. It's fueling my fire to fight the fight even harder. So, what's your take, Chris? I know I could probably just keep ranting here. I've got a lot of notes points I want to make, but I'll let you jump in here.
Yeah, you know what? You're touching upon a lot of the great things here, and I think the biggest piece here, when you say some of the feedback we've received from the past episode, which is great. It's always good to have feedback. It's always good to have a gauge as to where we're at. But let's make no mistake here. Just because a lot of people are doing the wrong things doesn't make it right. And I think that's the biggest issue in sport. Again, you said it's not just a hockey issue. In sport, there's so many wrong things that are being done. People just assume that it's right. So it gets normalized. That behavior gets normalized, whether it be from the coach or, whomever, whatever's going on in a culture. So I think that the important thing is, at least what I think I would like to, touch upon in conjunction with what I said last time. All I'm looking for is coaches coaches to be better leaders, organizations to be better leaders, to create a better culture for their teams, their organization, so that their players, their athletes can excel and be better people as a result of being involved with that organization or that team. That's all I want. I'm not sitting there saying it needs to be perfect, because it never is perfect. But it's the pursuit of being able to create a culture that's welcoming, a culture that's inviting, a culture that challenges, a culture that wants excellence, a culture that's going to push, a culture that's going to reward, a culture that's going to just create this essence of excellence, and knowing that it's never going to be a straight line to success. There's ups, there's downs, there's going to be all these things that happen, but it's the dehumanization, it's the demeaning behavior, it's the embarrassing, it's the hazing, it's the just the superiority pieces, it's the bullying, that stuff I can't stand. I just cannot stand for. And you mentioned the Harvard women's hockey. Yeah, we'll talk about that. So sociologists use a term called consensual validation. And the term consensual validation means the fact that millions of people share so many vices doesn't make those vices virtues. So let's understand that. So when people do want to say, hey, yeah, we're great and hockey's great. And well, wait a sec, let's take a step back and look at it from a proper lens here and be able to do this properly, because the game is great. The game is great. And sport is great. There's so many benefits to it. But let's try to get better at it. Let's challenge ourselves to be better. That's where I'm at.
No, I love that. It's a good take. And one of the assertions I want to make, and it kind of dawned on me today, was the leaders of sport are failing. Maybe not all of them, but there's a lot of them. And especially when we're talking governing bodies, when I'm talking Hockey Canada, like there's people that are clearly failing, and we need to make it very clear. And that was a lot of the point of that previous podcast, the Hockey's Broken one, is it's to encourage and promote and want leaders to step up and make bold decisions. But people are failing because they're not willing to make the tough choices and do things differently. They're just going along with the status quo. Two things that two similar things that have came up since that airing of the recording of the first podcast. I had two people, colleagues and friends, have had meetings with Hockey Canada recently, or one was a little bit while back, and one was recent, and both said it was a waste of time. There was no interest in coming to taking action and creating change. There was this sense of entitlement or arrogance by Hockey Canada. You know who we are. Like they're not looking to do things differently. They're going along with the status quo. They're not looking to the health of the players and taking like, hey, let's do right by the people. It's, hey, let's get results, and like, hey, we're the best, and whatever. So, and it doesn't surprise me. I kind of think I alluded to that in the other episodes. Like, what are they doing all day? Like, how are you sitting there and not making changes to the leagues, to the structure, to the systems, to the accountability of what's going on? And so to me, when we're like the leaders of sport, and again, it's not just Hockey Canada. There's other leagues. It's not like, and sometimes their hands are tied. And it doesn't mean that's all the people in Hockey Canada. And like, I don't know everything going on, like hockey in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Like, my understanding, some of them, they run it differently than here in Ontario. Definitely, we know in Ontario in the GTHL, there's challenges, and like there's swimming, there's gymnastics, there's problems in all kinds of sports. Again, to the people that are like thought it was only hockey, we were just making the post about it that way. And so again, the premise is having people taking a strong look in the mirror and make some bold decisions. It was funny. I was reflecting with someone earlier today, and he talked about when just in Ontario, they made the move to like cross ice games for like 5-year-olds. Like they finally started doing that, which is not really what we're talking about, but there was a structural change, which is good for the game. It's well proven. And they got backlash from that from a lot of parents. And like, and it took them a long time to make that decision. And there's still more of that can be done. And it's like, so that's good. That was a step in the right directions in some ways, but I'm sure that's why it takes them a long time to change. And it's like, nobody wants to sit there and deal with and get all these complaints and like, but what are you about? What are you going to make a stand for? And are you worried? Like, are you playing it safe and you're doing the easy thing and just going with the status quo, or do something different? So yeah, I could go on a lot here, but I think that's one of the big things. I'll shift gears a little bit to the hope side, because one of the interesting things that happened was I had a Canadian Hockey League general manager reach out to me, like the day it dropped, like 9 a.m. phone call. I'm like, and one of the guys, I know a handful of them, and I was like, he's like, were you talking about me? He's like, we was getting into it. And it's just like, and so it was an interesting discussion. And he's very much like, he's like they want the structure to change. It's very evident that they're not happy with the structure that's in. They know, like, it's like, it can be better. They don't want to have to, like, but it's like the system, the owners are there to make money, and the league's just there to support the owners. And the league should be there to support the players and create systems and rules. Like, just make a few rules and that league can become better. Like, just make a few rule changes, set standards, and make consequences if you don't follow the certain rule. Like, how difficult is it? To me, it doesn't seem that difficult. How difficult is it for governing bodies to say, we're doing things differently, and if you don't follow lines, there's consequences? Like, I get it. It can be difficult. To me, I feel like there's so much excuses at those different levels. They're just doing the things that are status quo, little thing, performative things, as Brock, like, they're not affecting real change. And again, I do think in some ways the culture is improving and there's some great things that have happened, but in a lot of other ways, it's worse than ever. And from like, in the culture of silence, and like the W5, which we're going to talk about, like with like the Oakville thing, the Harvard, like, it's still happening. The stuff we see and hear about. I was saying earlier too, we had a player in the US, an athlete, like a junior team. They come home 4 a.m. bag skate. It's like, what? Like, that's still going. It's 2022 last year. Like, that happened. It's like happening. Like, what is going on? Like, how is that being tolerated? Is that allowed? And so it fires me up. I'm doubling down on it. I'm going to keep fighting this fight because I think it needs to happen. I have this void, as like, from my own experiences, which I might be touching on in a bit, from my own research, from the work I do, and it's why I do the work that I do and why we're doing this. So couple other things to get into, Chris. I'm gonna shut up for a second because I'm just ranting here. But I think it's getting it off my chest because some of this stuff, like, and I don't know if you want to dive into it, but that W5, like, sick to my stomach watching, the Oakville player that passed away. And you can maybe speak to it. I could barely get through reading the Athletic um, article about, like, it's just like a maddening. My mind's racing. Like, it's there's it's wrong. I like she's still coaching right now. Like, I understand. Like, apparently she's like, what like who is holding these people accountable? Like, anyway, okay, I'm gonna stop. let,
Should just you're on a
let me
roll.
breathe
It
for a
should just
second here,
keep
Chris. Let
going.
me
Keep
breathe.
going.
I got 90, so I collect my breath.
Yeah, you know what? And you're on a good roll. It's just I think and for family or people out there that don't know in reference to the W5 episode last week, you can certainly just Google W5 and you can watch the
Yeah, we'll
episode.
put the link in the show notes too. We'll put the
Okay,
link in there.
perfect. Yeah, it was tragic case of a 17-year-old young man, young hockey player, went to a team bonding, or every team, a lot of teams do these kind of weekend bonding, or 3-4 day getaways before us training camp and whatever. And unfortunately, on this one team bonding excursion at the beginning of the season, this young man died. There's there was no oversight from and leadership, and I keep coming back to that leadership piece in terms of these young men. And alcohol was involved, and excessive alcohol, which it was involved, and let alone what they talk about in the episode, some of the hazing, like a naked maze run that they had to do in the outside so stuff like that is just, again, part of that culture. And I'm tired of hearing, oh, boys will be boys and it's the hockey culture. Enough of that stuff, man. Like, it's like you said, it's 2023. We need the leaders to be leaders, and we need the parents to kind of have, continue to have oversight over things. But I'm challenged. I want coaches to be better. They need to be better. Step up and say, yeah, you know what? I need to be better. Not necessarily because of an incident, but just maybe to have a little bit more insight to what's going on in their with their team. Be a little bit more concerned about that aspect of their team building versus the 1-3-1 power play that they're going to do because they saw it at a coaching conference with because the power play coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs was diagramming it. How about be concerned about what's going on beyond the X's and O's? So that's what I like to see. I want to see organizations take a little bit more responsibility and have this oversight to be able to create that culture. That's all we need. And you talk about the Harvard piece. What bugs me about that, and again, we'll put it in the show notes too, a link to the article in the Athletic. You may need a subscription to be able to read it, but you can probably kind of. There's other articles I'm sure you can find now that the story has broken. Katie Stone, the head coach of Harvard, is kind of being kind of investigated now by as is the whole Harvard women's hockey program. So this isn't just a Canadian hockey piece. It's not just a junior hockey piece. It's NCAA. And what I like to call this, and if you put this into perspective, it's what I would call institutional protectionism, or organizational protectionism. So the organization will always protect, the wrongdoings. And now, Harvard apparently had already done internal investigation, found nothing, because Katie Stone is one of the all-time winningest coaches in NCAA women's hockey history. So they're going to prioritize their reputation over, their athletes and their athletes' well-being. So to me, that's horseshit. That's horseshit. That's bad leadership. And to me, you're talking about Harvard. You're talking about the bastion of education. We're talking about titans of industry and commerce, and presidents of the United States have gone to Harvard. And yet they're still susceptible because the human nature is human nature. So where is the leadership here? You got, I commend Haley Salvian and Katie Strang, who did the article and did the investigation into the Harvard hockey piece. It's a well-written piece. And they talked to over 3 dozen current and former hockey players, dating back as far as 20 years in terms of some of the transgressions. What's disheartening for me with the Harvard piece is how many of the alumni women hockey players partook in some of the hazing because it was tradition. It was tradition to take part in some of that hazing. So the alumni came back and were partaking in it. Come on, come on. So that's the part that I get fired up about. It's like, like, again, just because there's been years of wrongdoing doesn't make it right. So they, again, institutional protectionism, they prioritize their reputation over the well-being of their athletes. And then that to me is it's despicable.
Yeah, and it to me it's about the culture of silence, right? Like 20, like it's a 2020, like she's still like she was like it's just starting to come out, and like my understanding, she won't be coaching next year, going to step down at the end of the year, or whatever. Try to like, but like, and it's I don't know how you get that information and then keep her in the role. Like it's like there's like is there no consequences to like some of those behaviors and the results, like the emotional abuse and the experiences of the athlete? Like it's like that's and I like to your point. And so my point is like, how do we break the culture of silence? And because like one of the things of the W5 that rattles me is one other parent spoke up and went on the record. One parent from, I think it was from the other team, a different age group, not even the same team, wanted to actually speak up and be on the record about the culture of that team and the experience in those training camps and stuff. And it's just like, and then the Harvard situation, like, and there's still people going to bat for her. And you talk about the protectors of the guard and the old ways and the like, oh, but like, you got to have some old school stuff. And, um,
So
it's
if I
like,
can
no,
if
like,
I can
no, go
speak
ahead.
to
Yeah.
that, like what's interesting about the Harvard one, I was listening to an interview with Katie Strang, who's the reporter, and she said of all the people, all the players that they interviewed as far back as 20 years, she made it very clear that not one of those players had a bad thing to say about the how hard the coach was, how hard that the program was and how challenging it was, because they felt that it allowed for them to become better players and challenging. But what they did have an issue was, and this was interesting, I wrote this down, but what impacted them the most was the low grade, everyday, incremental microaggressions and toxicity. And this is harder to kind of point out or identify because they just happen. They're subtle. It's a subtle comment. It's you walk through the locker room as a coach and you say something, or the kids are getting on the bus and oh yeah, you say, and everybody, it's a microaggression. It's subtle and it's hard to point out. It goes back to what you said earlier about neglect. I mean, those
Yeah.
kinds of things are part of it. So it wasn't the
Yeah.
large things that
Yeah.
contributed to this expose. It was these
Mhm.
microaggressions that have gone on for year after year after year, and after a while, it obviously it cascades and it overflows.
It takes its toll, and it sets the cultural norm that's it. And I think 100%. And one of the things out of that too is thinking about, um, like how can it be safe for people to speak up, and people are having a tough time and they're just leaving and quitting and don't want to deal with it. And where are they going to go? One of the things that, and I was saying to you before, I've got probably at least almost maybe 10 people this year. I've said, hey, do you want to come on the podcast and oust your coach? Like, just like, because what they're doing is, ridiculous. It's wrong. And athletes at different levels too, like from pro
Yeah.
to junior to even, some minor hockey, and different sports too. It's not always just hockey. But the point being, like, obviously they're not going to, and I'm not saying it in a way to like actually try to get them on. But it's, and obviously I can't share those stories and breach that. But the point is they don't feel safe enough. The leaders have not created that psychological safety. Leaders meaning like the organizations, except like where they're going to come to them with the problems, the issues, and try to find solutions, and it's safe. And so it's like like, so to me, that like, that's an issue.
So here's
That's a
here's a
huge
here's the
issue.
thing, and I know that we've talked about this and some of the work that we do with teams and whatnot. Hence the need for maybe a third party organization or third party people, like yourself, like myself, and some of the consulting stuff we do to be there, so athletes, can have a voice, so that they have that psychological safety, and feel that they can contribute, communicate, what's going on. And what I find interesting, and this is kind of one of those chicken and eggs things, like I was reading an article actually just before we came on to record, just as of today, one of the top 4 defensemen on that women's Harvard team, an 18-year-old, defenseman, prominent freshman, actually, she's entered the transfer portal. So the question I would wonder, and again, I don't know, it's a hypothetical, is if the story doesn't break to you kind of put this out there in the national spotlight, does she have that psychological safety to enter the transfer portal?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
God, again, thank goodness that there's this opportunity. So, wouldn't it be great if universities, colleges, organizations at the CHL, the USHL level were able to hire, people like us to be able to say, hey, you know what? We want to bring you. You guys are, the third party kind of people to kind of be there for our athletes. So there's that valve, right? There's that safety. There's an opportunity for them to have that kind of outlet. And so here's the thing: when you talk earlier about you talk about in terms of changing things. Have you ever heard of a guy by the name of Buckminster Fuller?
No, I don't think so.
No, he's a 20th century architect, and one of the things he had a great saying, and it's a take on Socrates, and he just said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete."
Hmm.
And that's where we're at, Cass. It's time to
Yep.
build new models here. We need to build new models here for our sport, and for sports, and obviously hockey being obviously the one that we focus a lot on. But it's time to build a
Yeah.
new model, and I think that's the
Yeah.
idea here. I mean, we could fight against the existing reality all we want, and that's going to be
Yeah.
great. But
Yeah.
let's start building a new model. Let's start creating something different. Something exciting. That's where the hope lies. The hope lies. You mentioned earlier, there's hope. There is hope. There's a lot of great people in this game, and and I think it's just as we need to just continue building on that kind of idea of hope.
No, I think that's a great way to start to wrap this up, because it's, building a new like building a new way, building a new structure. Like, if you'd start from scratch, what would you do? If and maybe you can't always blow it up and completely do it new, but like, hey, what can we? How can we completely revamp? How can we be innovative, and creative, and
That's right.
creating solutions versus just doing small little tweaks and putting band-aids on bullet holes? Is
Yeah.
one of the analogies I use sometimes. It's like, not like, let's put up some armor, let's put up some actual structure and safety, like psychological safety. And I get like your 2 point, whether it's an outside body or just creating that internally, and like within the league, like NCAA, the CHL, the junior leagues, the GTHL should have a whole department, like, or a person or certain roles, like full time potentially, even to the psychological safety and to the development of the players and the athletes and the people. Like it's there's and to me, it doesn't have to be that difficult. And that was like
No.
the discussion I had with the GM. Like, it could be just a few significant but important, and not that big, but important tweaks can have a significant impact and trickle effect. It's like, hey, can't do this anymore, have to do it this way. These are the consequences if you do it that way. You're allowed now to do this, because sometimes there's like set rules that just tie their hands to not do things. So, and I don't know, I don't have all the solutions, but I
Right.
think you put some heads together, you have a mindset of being open, creative, innovative, looking for new ways, and you have to be bold. Is my thing, and that's why, again, with the leaders, okay, how come, like, I don't care if I get flack back. I want to try something different, because I don't think the current model is working. And that's where, like, again, people are like, oh, the current model's fine. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The current model's fine. It is not fine. And so, and maybe that's not everywhere. Maybe there is a certain sports or certain areas in hockey that, like the Minnesota model, as like, according to Mike Steve, like, that looks pretty good in a lot of ways. And but the premise being, yeah, it's there's time for a new one. So I think that's all I'm gonna hit on for my side today. Anything else you want to do to wrap up?
No, that's great, and it's certainly obviously a topic that's kind of fires us both up, and I think it fires us up because we care, and we care about sport, we care about hockey, we care about the impact it has on people, and it can have such a beautifully positive impact, and you're a result of that positive impact of sport. I believe I am. I believe I'm trying to contribute to that in a lot of ways, as you are. And I think that's really where we're coming at this from. We're coming at it as much as we're coming at it very passionately, but we're coming at it from a standpoint of wanting to continue to grow it in a fashion that allows for people to enjoy it and be better people as a result of their enjoyment of hockey and sport.
No, 100%. Very well said. And I think, we're, I appreciate all the people with the feedback and the support. And I welcome the challenge. You've got an issue with our stance, let me know, because probably like that's a growing opportunity both ways, or at least it gives me fuel and to keep moving towards what I value and the voids that I see and what drives me. So we'll keep going beyond the X and O's. Thanks, Chris.
All right, thanks, Cass.